Number 1. Vault B, the Padmanabhaswamy Temple. In the city of Thiruvananthapuram, in the southern Indian state of Kerala, stands a temple to Vishnu, shown reclining on the cosmic serpent Adi Shesha. Beneath it lie 6 vaults, labeled A through F. 5 of them have been opened. 1 has not. Its door is carved with 2 facing cobras, and almost no one will touch it. The story of how this door became famous begins in 2011. A devotee named T.P. Sundara Rajan filed suit, alleging the temple's wealth was being mismanaged. The Supreme Court of India ordered an inventory. When the first vaults were opened, what they found stunned the country. Investigators counted gold coins by the sack. They lifted gold chains nearly 18 feet long. They cataloged a solid gold idol of Vishnu, diamonds, and emeralds. The treasure was valued at over 1 trillion rupees, more than $20 billion, making this one of the richest religious sites on Earth. But Vault B was left sealed. Its door shows no visible bolts, no lock, and no hinge. To some, that suggests it was closed by a method now forgotten, a sound-based seal that local tradition calls Naga Bandham. The belief holds that only a holy man chanting the correct Garuda mantra can open it without unleashing disaster. That belief grew stronger because Sundara Rajan, the man who started the case, died in 2011 before it was resolved. The Travancore royal family, the temple's hereditary trustees, argued that Vault B was not a treasury at all. They said it was a sacred sanctum that should never be disturbed. The court's own legal advisor, Gopal Subramaniam, urged caution. Experts argued over what was inside. Some said another idol. Others warned the chamber might hold a floodgate to the sea, which would flood the temple if breached. In 2020, the Supreme Court upheld the family's right to manage the temple, and the question was quietly shelved. No authorized scan has ever mapped what lies behind the Cobra door. 3 explanations compete. The mainstream view is that it is simply a long-sealed ritual chamber. The popular view imagines untold treasure. The fringe view insists it is cursed and booby-trapped. What unites them is fear. And if this door is sealed by law and superstition, the next one is sealed by something far more direct. It can actually kill you. Number 2. Pluto's gate at Hierapolis. In what is now western Turkey, beside the famous white terraces of Pamukkale, the Romans built a gateway to the underworld. They were not speaking in metaphor. The ancient Greek geographer Strabo, writing in the 1st century BC, described a place called the Plutonium, an opening in the rock that breathed out deadly vapor. Pliny the Elder recorded the same. The site was dedicated to Pluto and to Kor, also called Persephone, the rulers of the dead. For centuries, its exact location was uncertain. Then, in 2013, the Italian archaeologist Francesco D'Andrea of the University of Salento confirmed he had found it. What makes Pluto's gate lethal is geology. The temple sits directly over a deep fault that vents concentrated carbon dioxide gas. Carbon dioxide is heavier than air, so it pools low to the ground. Ancient priests understood the effect without understanding the chemistry. They would lead bulls to the mouth of the cave, and the animals would stagger and drop dead, while the priests stood unharmed. To the crowds, this looked like proof of divine power over life and death. The science is now measured. In 2018, a study led by Hardy Fons recorded carbon dioxide concentrations reaching between 40 and 91% inside a pocket near the opening at dawn. A lake of invisible gas forms in the arena overnight and burns off in the daytime sun. Birds that fly too close still fall dead, exactly as the ancient writers described. The priests survived because the deadly layer sat below their heads. They likely knew to stand tall, hold their breath, and time their movements. Spectators watched from a seating area, like an audience at a theater of death. Strabo even wrote that he tested it himself with small birds and watched them die instantly. Today, the gate is part of a UNESCO World Heritage Site, but it remains genuinely dangerous. The fault still releases gas, and researchers must carry monitors to work there safely. This is not a door sealed by law or legend. It is sealed by a poison the planet itself keeps producing. It is one of the clearest cases of an ancient religion built directly on top of real geology. From a door that kills with gas, we move to one that has been deliberately bricked shut for nearly 500 years over a prophecy about who is allowed to walk through it. Number 3. The Golden Gate of Jerusalem. In the eastern wall of the Old City, facing the Mount of Olives, stands one of the most contested doorways on earth. In Hebrew, it is called Sha'ar HaRachamim, the Gate of Mercy. In Arabic, it is Bab al-Dahabi, the Golden Gate. It is actually a double gate, with 2 arched portals known as the Gate of Mercy and the Gate of Repentance. The structure that stands today probably dates to the Byzantine or early Umayyad period, the 6th or 7th century AD, though it may rest on far older foundations. What everyone notices first is that it is sealed. The arches are filled in with stone. Tradition credits the sealing to the Ottoman Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent around the year 1541. Why seal a gate? Here, belief is the lock. In Jewish tradition, the Messiah will one day enter Jerusalem through this very gate. In Christian tradition, it is linked to the entry of Jesus on Palm Sunday. One persistent legend claims that Suleiman sealed the gate and placed a cemetery in front of it, specifically to block the Messiah's path. Historians debate whether that motive is real, but the Muslim cemetery before the gate is genuine and centuries old. The gate has remained a flashpoint into modern times. In 2019, tensions flared when worshippers reopened a nearby hall known as Bab al-Rahma. The ground here is layered with history. In 1969, a researcher named James Fleming reported falling into a hole in front of the gate, where he glimpsed older arches and stones beneath, hinting at an even earlier gate below the visible one. Yet no modern archaeological excavation of the sealed gate has ever been allowed. The Temple Mount operates under a delicate status quo arrangement, administered by the Islamic Waqf, and the religious and political stakes are enormous. This is a door no one will open, not because of gas or collapse, but because 3 faiths attach their deepest hopes to it, and because sovereignty over the site is fiercely disputed. It has stood sealed for nearly 5 centuries, and it may stay that way for centuries more. The next door is sealed by something more stubborn than any sultan. It is sealed by the very mountain built on top of it. Number 4. The burial chamber of Mount Nemrut. High in the mountains of southeastern Turkey, at an elevation of about 2,134 meters, sits one of the strangest tombs in the ancient world. It was built by King Antiochus I of Commagene, a small kingdom that flourished between Greek and Persian worlds, who ruled roughly from 70 to 31 BC. Antiochus did not want to be forgotten. He ordered the construction of a hierothesion, a combined royal tomb and cult sanctuary on the summit. To mark it, he raised colossal seated statues, 8 to 9 meters tall, of himself and a blended pantheon of Greek and Persian gods. Over the centuries, the heads toppled from the bodies, and today, those giant stone faces lie scattered across the terraces, staring up at the sky. The signature feature is the tumulus itself, a man-made mountain of crushed limestone, roughly 49 meters tall and about 150 meters across, built from countless fist-sized stones. Somewhere beneath that cone, archaeologists believe, lies the actual burial chamber of Antiochus. No one has ever reached it. The problem is the rubble. The stones are loose, and whenever anyone tunnels into the cone, the rock simply flows back like sand, filling the passage. The site was rediscovered in 1881 by a German engineer named Karl Sester. The most determined effort came from the archaeologist Teresa Goel, who led major investigations in the 1950s and 60s. Goel drilled. she tunneled. Her team even experimented with explosives. The mountain defeated every attempt, swallowing each opening as fast as it was made. Modern geophysical surveys suggest a chamber may indeed lie below, but the unstable cone makes access nearly impossible. Disturbing it on a large scale risks both destroying the monument and burying the excavators alive. Today, Mount Nemrut is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, recognized since 1987, celebrated for its hybrid Greek, Armenian, and Persian art. An inscription on the site records Antiochus's own instructions for his cult and offerings. The toppled heads may have fallen from earthquakes or deliberate destruction. The summit is snowbound for much of the year, leaving only a short season to work. Whether the chamber holds the king's body or is only a cenotaph remains unknown. This door was sealed by physics. The next was sealed by hand, behind marble guardians, in the age of Alexander the Great. Number 5. The sealing walls of the Kasta Tomb at Amphipolis. In northern Greece, near the ancient city of Amphipolis, a great mound concealed a discovery that gripped the world in 2014. Between 2012 and 2014, a team led by the archaeologist Katerina Peristeri excavated what proved to be the largest ancient tomb ever found in Greece. The wall encircling the mound, called the Peribolos, runs nearly 497 meters around. The tomb dates to the last quarter of the 4th century BC, the era of Alexander the Great. As the diggers cleared the entrance, they uncovered guardians. First, 2 marble sphinxes flanking the doorway. Deeper inside, 2 caryatids, sculpted female figures, framed another door. Beyond them lay a stunning pebble mosaic showing the abduction of Persephone by Hades, with the god Hermes leading the way. In the burial chamber, archaeologists found the remains of at least 5 individuals, including a woman of about 60, 2 men, a newborn infant, and cremated bone. Who was buried in such splendor? The leading theory, argued by Peristeri, is that the tomb honored Hephaestion, the closest companion of Alexander the Great, who died shortly before the king. Other scholars propose different names, including Alexander's mother Olympias, his wife Roxana, or his young son Alexander IV. Some attribute the monument's design to the architect Dinocrates. Many believe the famous Lion of Amphipolis, a nearby statue, once stood atop the mound as its crowning marker. What makes this a sealed door is that the builders deliberately filled the chambers with walls of sand and stone to block them. After the dramatic excavation, work was paused, and the identity of the occupant remains unresolved and fiercely debated. There are signs that the tomb was entered and disturbed in antiquity. Greek authorities tightly control access, and it is not fully open to the public. The question of who lies inside is one of the great open mysteries of Macedonian archaeology, slowed further by the challenges of conservation and funding. 3 possibilities dominate the debate. The tomb may be the monument of Hephaestion, it may be a royal family burial, or it may be a heroon, a shrine, rather than a true grave. From a tomb sealed at the surface, we descend now, deep underground, to a chamber carved 5,000 years ago that no visitor is allowed to enter. Number 6. The lower levels of the Hypogeum of Hal Saflieni. On the small Mediterranean island of Malta, in the town of Paola, lies a structure unlike any other on Earth, an entire temple carved downward into solid rock. The Hypogeum of Hal Saflieni was discovered by accident in 1902, when workers digging cisterns for new houses broke through into its chambers. It was first studied by Father Manuel Magri, who died before publishing his findings, and then by the archaeologist Themistocles Zammit, beginning in 1907. The complex dates from roughly 4000 to 2500 BC. Its builders hollowed out 3 descending levels, reaching about 10.5 meters below the surface, covering some 500 square meters, using only antler picks and stone tools. Inside, archaeologists found the remains of an estimated 7,000 people. The Hypogeum is famous for its carved spaces, including the Holy of Holies, and the Oracle Room, decorated with spiraling red ochre paintings, sometimes called the Tree of Life. The Oracle Room has a remarkable property. A voice at the right pitch, near 110 Hz, sets the whole chamber resonating, a deep vibration you feel in your chest. Here too was found the Sleeping Lady, a small clay figurine of a reclining woman, now a treasure of Malta's Archaeology Museum. Today, access is strictly rationed. Only about 80 visitors are admitted per day to protect the fragile microclimate from humidity and carbon dioxide that visitors breathe out. There is a darker legend attached to the site. An old story claims a school group once vanished into a lost lower passage and was never seen again. The tale is an urban myth, repeatedly debunked, but it endures. The deepest pit-like chamber is sometimes called the Abyss, and visitors are not permitted to descend into it. The site was closed entirely between 1991 and 2000 for the installation of climate controls. It has been a UNESCO World Heritage Site since 1980, the only prehistoric underground temple of its kind. The red spirals are among the oldest paintings in the Maltese Islands, and the structure mirrors the above-ground megalithic temples like Tarxian. Some chambers remain off-limits, even to researchers, purely for preservation. From a sealed chamber that genuinely exists, we move to one that authorities insist does not exist at all, beneath the most famous statue on Earth. Number 7. The Hall of Records beneath the Sphinx. The Great Sphinx of Giza was carved from a single ridge of limestone bedrock around 2500 BC, most likely under the pharaoh Khafra. For thousands of years, it has crouched at the edge of the desert, but the door we are discussing here was never described by the ancient Egyptians at all. The Hall of Records is a modern idea. It comes from the American psychic Edgar Cayce, who lived from 1877 to 1945. Cayce prophesied that a sealed archive, holding the records of the lost civilization of Atlantis, lay hidden in a chamber connected to the right paw of the Sphinx. He even predicted it would be found around 1998. That year came and went with nothing found, but the legend refused to die, partly because real surveys did detect something. In 1991, a seismic survey by the geophysicist Thomas Dobecki, working with the geologist Robert Schoch, identified subsurface cavities near the Sphinx. Schoch separately argued, controversially, that weathering patterns suggest the Sphinx is far older than mainstream dates allow. To believers, the cavities were proof of Cayce's chamber. To Egyptologists, they were nothing of the sort. Zahi Hawass, the prominent Egyptian archaeologist, has repeatedly dismissed the Hall of Records as pure fantasy and blocked any invasive drilling. Known features around the Sphinx include a vertical shaft sometimes called the Hawass Hole and tunnels explored in the 1980s and 90s. None of them revealed an archive. Ground-penetrating radar does show voids, but mainstream geologists attribute them to natural fissures in the limestone, the kind of karst features you find in any such rock. The legend has been kept alive by the broader world of lost civilization theories, popularized by authors like Graham Hancock. Drilling beneath the Sphinx is forbidden, both to protect the eroding monument, and because authorities reject the premise entirely. So three views collide. The mainstream sees natural cavities. The fringe sees an archive of a vanished supercivilization. And a cautious middle wonders whether some unexcavated Old Kingdom chamber might yet exist without any Atlantean baggage. This is a door that authorities refuse to open by insisting there is no door at all. But the next door is one that science has actually proven is real. A genuine empty space, hidden inside the largest pyramid ever built. Number 8. The Big Void of the Great Pyramid. The Great Pyramid of Khufu at Giza was completed around 2560 BC, rising originally to about 146.5 meters. For more than 4,000 years, people assumed its interior was fully mapped. Then, in 2017, a project called Scan Pyramids announced something extraordinary. They had discovered a large, previously unknown void hidden above the Grand Gallery. the discovery did not come from digging. It came from physics. The team used muon tomography. Muons are particles created when cosmic rays strike the upper atmosphere, and they constantly rain down through everything around us. As they pass through stone, denser rock absorbs more of them, and empty space lets more through. By placing detectors inside and around the pyramid, scientists could effectively see the density of the structure, like a giant natural X-ray. 3 independent teams, from Nagoya University, from the Japanese laboratory KEK, and from the French agency CEA, all confirmed the same anomaly. Their results were published in the journal Nature in November of 2017. The void is at least 30 meters long, comparable in scale to the Grand Gallery beneath it. What is it? No one knows. It may be a relieving space, left by the builders to reduce the crushing weight of stone above the gallery. It may be a corridor. It may be an undiscovered chamber. The lead researchers, including Mehdi Tayubi of the HIP Institute and Kunihiro Morishima of Nagoya, were careful not to overclaim. Even Zahi Hawass cautioned that it might be a gap rather than a room. The same project went on to confirm, in 2023, a separate north face corridor, about 9 meters long, hidden behind the great chevron blocks near the entrance, verified with an endoscope. But the big void itself has no known entrance. No one has physically reached it. Ideas have been floated, such as drilling a tiny hole and inserting a small robot or even a balloon to look inside, but none have been carried out. This is the first major internal discovery in the pyramid in centuries. Muon imaging was permitted precisely because it is non-invasive. The trouble is that imaging can find a void, but it cannot tell you what is inside. To learn that, someone would have to make a hole in a 4,500-year-old wonder, and no authority will approve it lightly. The next door is even more delicate, because cutting it would damage one of the most beautiful painted walls humanity has ever made. Number 9. The hidden chamber behind Tutankhamun's tomb. When Howard Carter discovered the tomb of Tutankhamun in 1922, it became the most famous archaeological find in history. The tomb, known as K-Fission 62, in the Valley of the Kings, was packed with golden treasure. But there was always something odd about it. For a pharaoh, K-Vai 62 is remarkably small, which led some to suspect it had originally been built for someone else and then repurposed in a hurry. In 2015, the British Egyptologist Nicholas Reeves proposed a startling idea. Studying high-resolution scans of the painted walls, he believed he could see faint straight lines, the outlines of doorways that had been blocked up and plastered over behind the north and west walls. Reeves went further. He argued that K-Fi 62 was originally the tomb of Queen Nefertiti, and that her burial still lay sealed behind one of those hidden doors. The idea electrified the field, and a series of radar surveys followed. In 2015, a scan by the Japanese radar specialist Hirokazu Watanabe suggested there were indeed cavities behind the wall, but later work told a different story. In 2018, a careful radar study, led by Francesco Porcelli of the Politecnico di Torino, concluded there was no evidence of any hidden chamber at all. The Egyptologists were divided. Zahi Hawass was openly skeptical of the Nefertiti theory. And crucially, the Egyptian authorities refused to cut through the painted plaster to settle the question, because the north wall is a priceless work of art, showing the pharaoh's successor, performing the opening of the mouth ritual. To breach it would risk irreversible damage. Reeves continued to defend his theory, pointing to the tomb's unusual decoration and dimensions, which he argued fit a queen's burial better than a king's. Nefertiti's own mummy and tomb have never been definitively identified, though some candidate mummies, such as the so-called Younger Lady from tomb K535, have been proposed. The contradictory radar results came partly from the difficulty of scanning through that particular wall. So the ghost doorway remains exactly that, a faint shadow on a painted surface that no one is willing to breach. It is a perfect example of how modern scanning can fuel a mystery without ever resolving it. The last door on our list is guarded not by paint, but by poison and ancient machines of war. Number 10. The tomb of Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor. Qin Shi Huang, who lived from 259 to 210 BC, was the first ruler to unify China and the founder of the Qin dynasty. His mausoleum lies near the city of Xi'an, and its burial mound still rises about 76 meters tall, with a base roughly 350 meters on each side. Most people know this place for what surrounds it. In 1974, farmers digging a well stumbled onto the terracotta army. Excavation of the outer pits has since revealed more than 8,000 life-sized clay soldiers, around 130 chariots, and 670 horses, each figure individually detailed. Yet here is the astonishing part. The central burial mound itself, where the emperor actually lies, has never been excavated or opened. Why not? The answer comes from a warning written more than 2,000 years ago. The historian Sima Qian, in his Shiji around 100 BC, described the inside of the tomb in vivid detail. He wrote that it contained flowing rivers of liquid mercury, representing the great rivers of China, beneath a domed ceiling set with stars. He also wrote that the tomb was protected by automatic crossbows, rigged to fire on anyone who broke in. For a long time, the mercury sounded like myth. Then modern scientists tested the soil around the mound and found abnormally high concentrations of mercury, exactly where the ancient text said the rivers should be. That single fact transformed the legend into a genuine hazard. Opening the tomb could release toxic mercury vapor, but danger is only half the reason it stays sealed. The other half is preservation. When the terracotta soldiers were first unearthed in the 1970s, many still had traces of their original paint. Within minutes of exposure to the dry air, that paint curled and flaked away forever. Chinese authorities learned a hard lesson. They now hold an official policy of not excavating the mound until preservation technology can guarantee nothing is lost. The complex covers some 56 square kilometers and reportedly took around 700,000 laborers, decades to build. Remote sensing and core samples have mapped it without disturbing it. It has been a UNESCO World Heritage Site since 1987. Satellite pits have yielded bronze chariots and even acrobat figures. But the emperor's own coffin has remained sealed and unseen for over 2,200 years. 10 doors, scattered across the world. And when you line them up, a single pattern begins to emerge. Step back from the individual stories, and the 10 doors sort themselves into 3 master reasons for staying shut. The first is physical danger. Pluto's gate breathes lethal carbon dioxide. Qin Shi Huang's tomb may flood with mercury vapor. Mount Nemrut collapses on anyone who tunnels in. The second reason is sacred prohibition. Vault B carries a curse and a cobra warning. The Golden Gate is bound by the prophecies of 3 religions. The deepest level of the Hypogeum is treated as untouchable. The third reason is preservation. The big void cannot be reached without damaging the Great Pyramid. Tutankhamun's wall is too precious to cut. The Amphipolis chambers are fragile and contested. What is remarkable is how often ancient builders weaponized nature itself as a lock. Mercury and carbon dioxide became chemical guardians. A mound of loose rubble became self-sealing architecture, defeating intruders by design or by luck. Curses and prophecies served as social locks, keeping people away without a single physical barrier. And in modern times, new locks appeared in the form of court orders, religious authorities, and national sovereignty. One lesson runs through all of it. Sealed rarely means empty. There is almost always something behind these doors, which is exactly why the debates burn so hot. There is also a crucial distinction between the doors we cannot open and the doors we will not open. Nemrut and Pluto's gate resist us physically. The Golden Gate and Vault B could be opened tomorrow if anyone dared. Modern archaeology has shifted dramatically on this point. A century ago, the instinct was to dig everything as fast as possible. The loss of the terracotta army's paint, vanishing in minutes, taught the field a brutal lesson about the cost of haste. Today, the guiding principle is to preserve in place and to wait. The recurring imagery is haunting, too. Again and again, these doors are guarded by symbols of death and warning, cobras, sphinxes, and gods of the underworld. Across continents and millennia, different civilizations independently arrived at the same idea, the warning door, the threshold you are not meant to cross. But if these doors have stayed shut for so long, how have we learned anything at all about what lies behind them? The answer is that we have learned to see through stone. The reason we can even talk about a void inside the Great Pyramid without ever entering it is a tool borrowed from particle physics. Muon tomography uses the steady rain of cosmic particles that passes through everything on Earth. Because dense rock absorbs more muons than empty air, detectors can map the hidden density of a structure, revealing chambers no human eye has seen. It was so reliable that 3 separate teams cross-checked the big void before anyone believed it. Ground-penetrating radar is another window. It sends pulses into the rock and listens for echoes, and it has been used at both Tutankhamun's tomb and the Sphinx. But radar has limits. At Cave 62, the composition of the painted wall scattered the signal, which is partly why different surveys reached opposite conclusions. Near the Sphinx, seismic refraction surveys, like the one run by Thomas Dobecki, send sound waves through the ground and time their return to find cavities. Electrical resistivity mapping measures how easily current flows through the earth, highlighting hidden voids. At Qin Shi Huang's tomb, scientists used chemical assays, sampling the soil for mercury, to confirm an ancient text without lifting a single stone. Endoscopes, tiny cameras on flexible tubes, allowed the Scan Pyramids team to peer into the North Face corridor in 2023. Drones, laser scanning called LiDAR, and photogrammetry now map sites too dangerous or remote to enter on foot. The common thread is that non-invasive tools win permission where drilling never could. But there is a hard ceiling on what they can do. Imaging can find a void, but it cannot tell you what is inside it. There is always a gap between detecting a space and verifying its contents. That gap is fertile ground for speculation, because a vague anomaly can be read as a relieving space by an engineer, and as a lost archive by a believer. The same scan feeds both the mainstream and the fringe. The next frontier may close some of that gap, with micro-robots small enough to slip through a pinhole, and artificial intelligence that reconstructs spaces from partial data. Yet even when the technology exists to look inside, a harder question remains. Who gets to decide whether we should? Every one of these doors has a gatekeeper, and the gatekeepers are as varied as the doors. Vault B answers to the Supreme Court of India, and to the hereditary trusteeship of the Travancore royal family, whose religious authority the court itself chose to respect. In Egypt, the Antiquities Authority holds enormous power, and figures like Zahi Hawass have personally vetoed projects at the Sphinx and at Tutankhamun's tomb. The Golden Gate sits under the Islamic Waqf and the fragile status quo that governs the Temple Mount, where a single unauthorized act can spark international crisis. Greece keeps tight control over Amphipolis. China maintains a deliberate national policy against opening the first emperor's mound. Malta limits access to the Hypogeum purely to preserve its climate. Turkey stewards both Nemrut and Hierapolis. Behind these rules lies something deeper than bureaucracy. These monuments are tied to national identity and to religious conviction, and opening them is never a purely scientific decision. Religious authority and archaeological authority frequently pull in opposite directions. UNESCO. World Heritage status adds another layer of obligation to protect rather than exploit. The long, painful legacy of colonial-era excavation, when foreign expeditions carried away whatever they pleased, has made many nations and communities deeply wary of outsiders digging into their heritage. Local people often oppose excavation outright, whether out of reverence, suspicion, or belief in a curse. There is also the simple tension between tourism revenue, which rewards spectacle, and preservation, which rewards restraint. Curse beliefs themselves can function as a kind of public veto, raising the social cost of opening a door until no official wants to be the one who dared. A single lawsuit can freeze a site for years, as happened with Vault B. Modern archaeology increasingly embraces the precautionary principle, the idea that, when in doubt, you do not cut. And yet, there are cases where authorities have reversed course and permitted careful, limited study once the methods were proven safe. The balance is always shifting between legal, religious, and scientific stewardship. But for all our tools and all our gatekeepers, there remains a long list of things we still genuinely do not know. Honesty requires admitting how much remains hidden. We do not know what lies in Vault B, whether it holds an idol, a hoard, or an empty sanctum. We do not know whether the chamber under Mount Nemrut actually contains the body of Antiochus, or whether the king's grave is elsewhere. We do not know for certain who lies in the great tomb at Amphipolis, despite years of analysis and a short list of famous names. We do not know what the deepest level of the Hypogeum once held, or why it was treated with such reverence. We do not know whether any chamber truly exists beneath the Sphinx, or whether the cavities are simply natural cracks in the limestone. We do not know the true function of the Great Pyramid's big void, whether it is structural, ceremonial, or something else entirely. We do not know whether anything at all waits behind Tutankhamun's painted north wall. We do not know the exact layout of Qin Shi Huang's underground palace, or how much of it survives intact. We do not even fully understand why the priests of Pluto's gate genuinely survived, beyond the simple physics of where the gas pooled. We do not know whether the Golden Gate conceals an older gate beneath it. Part of the difficulty is the limit of our instruments. Current imaging can outline a void, but not read its contents, and the finer the detail we want, the harder it becomes. There is also the constant danger of confirmation bias, the way a believer can read certainty into an ambiguous blur. We do not even know how many sealed doors remain entirely undiscovered, waiting under sand or rock for some future accident. The way a farmer's well revealed the terracotta army, and a cistern dig revealed the Hypogeum. Some of these mysteries may simply never be resolved in our lifetimes. Each unopened door is at once a frustration and a gift, a question we cannot answer, and a time capsule preserved precisely because no one forced it open. Which leads to the deepest question of all, the one that sits behind every locked threshold. Why are we so desperate to open them? There is a strange power in a door that stays shut. The unopened door is a symbol of the limits of human knowledge, a reminder that for all our science, the past still keeps secrets. And mystery itself has value, both cultural and scientific. Preservation is, in the truest sense, a gift to the future, to archaeologists not yet born who will have tools we cannot imagine and who will thank us for not blundering in first. There is a quiet humility in choosing to leave some doors closed. Each of these thresholds encodes a civilization's deepest fears and highest hopes, the things they considered too sacred, too dangerous, or too precious to leave exposed. Again and again, across continents and across thousands of years, human beings felt the same instinct, to seal away what mattered most. The discipline of archaeology has grown up around that instinct, shifting from an age of conquest, when discovery meant possession, to an age of stewardship, when the highest achievement may be restraint. Some answers really are worth waiting for. These 10 doors connect a temple vault in India a gas-breathing gate in Turkey, a sealed gate in Jerusalem, a rubble mountain in the highlands, a marble tomb in Greece, an underground temple in Malta, a denied chamber under the Sphinx, a void in the Great Pyramid, a ghost door in the Valley of the Kings, and a poisoned palace in China. The thread that ties them is always the same: danger, faith, and preservation. In the end, what these doors reveal is less about the dead who built them, and more about us, the living, who cannot stop wondering. They demand patience from a species that craves answers now. They insist that not everything must be known immediately, and perhaps not everything should be. And the doors are still there, every one of them, patient and silent and intact, scattered across the ancient world. The best discoveries may turn out to be the ones we have not made yet, the ones still waiting, just on the other side of the stone. So the next time you imagine these 10 sealed doors, ask yourself the only question that really matters. If you held the key, would you turn it, or would you let the mystery stand?